Welcome to Centre Court. Thanks to TAC. How safe is your car? Ash Brazill is joining me, as she usually does every single week. Now, Ash, we're both in black. I don't know if that's because of we're both in Melbourne and all of a sudden there's new COVID cases and we're in a bit of mourning.
I like it though. It works with the background.
It does work. At least we've got a bit of brightness in the background to help us out. Lots been happening in netball, but a big thing for us and our show is that we now have a Twitter handle at Centre Court Show, and keep tagging us Centre Court Netball whenever you find anything interesting across the netball over the weekend or during the week. There certainly has been a lot going on, hasn't there, Braz?
And I feel like there's going to be a lot more this week, Bianca, with COVID hitting Melbourne.
Absolutely. Now, you got another win. What an incredible win against the Firebirds. Team morale must be high.
No, it's good. And I think for us, it was more we played the netball we wanted to and against an amazing side. You know, I think at any stage of that game, Queensland could have won or we could have won, and the fact that we finished it off, yeah, I think we'll bring it up later on in the show about how excited my coach was.
It's now time to get to the agenda, thanks to TAC. Make safety features a priority in your next car. Visit howsafeisyourcar.com.au. Well, we have to talk about it. I thought COVID was done in 2020 and we wouldn't have to be bringing it up again this year. But here we are in Melbourne, and it seems like there is enough cases around that we're hearing that the AFL clubs have gone into lockdown. So that's a self-imposed thing by the AFL to make sure all the Melbourne clubs are now in lockdown for 7 days and allowed to leave their house for anything other than, I believe, a training session or the game. They have to stay within their house just to make sure that they're not out mingling in the community when we still really don't know how much is around in the area. But obviously this isn't about footy, this is about netball, and we have two teams here in Melbourne, the Melbourne Vixens and the Magpies. And Melbourne Vixens have been told today, and we're recording on a Wednesday, have been told today that they are getting out right now. They were meant to fly out on Friday for a game against the Firebirds. They're now flying out today and had to quickly pack up everything, and they're on a flight this afternoon. So we see here they play on Saturday against the Firebirds. The Magpies, though, also an away game. You play on Sunday against the Swifts. You've come straight from training to do the show. What's the discussion? Because I don't believe you're flying out today.
No, we're not. And obviously we asked the question as soon as we got to the club, and you know, you talk about the AFL men going into lockdown, and the way I see it, AFL always know before the rest of us.
I know, they always have that insight from the government.
Yeah, if that's anything to go from, I'd be thinking that we might get the phone call anytime soon. But I think going off history, Sydney have always kept their borders open that bit longer, so I think Netball Australia are just holding back there. I still think we'll be flying out soon, but you never know.
Oh, you've just got to be ready.
Yeah.
And we know there's no other games really happening in Victoria. So thankfully, hopefully we get both teams out safe, games can continue on, and that Victoria, it's just a small little...
And I think that's where you're at. Like we're obviously hoping that it goes away pretty quickly, but you look at the following week, yes, we are playing the Swifts this week in Sydney, but next week we play Fever in Melbourne.
And it's a double header, so Vixens also play Thunderbirds after you, I believe.
Yeah, and Adelaide and Western Australia are two states that close their borders pretty quickly. So for me, I wouldn't even be worried about this game. I'm worried about next week because Fever won't be allowed, well, they'll be allowed to come to Melbourne. They won't be allowed to go back home if that's the case, and I'm assuming that would be Adelaide. So I would be thinking now, do the two Melbourne teams go into a mini hub in Sydney or Queensland just so we are out of Melbourne?
Wow, I wonder if that means us commentators have to get on the move as well.
You can be the water girl for the Magpies, Pete. Jump on our flight.
Oh, man. I've just still got my fingers crossed that this is just going to be a small little hiccup and that it's like the other states. Some have gone into lockdown for a day and then it's all over.
You're very confident. I'm like, get
Positive
me out of here.
Please, is what I'm all about. All right, well, I wanted to talk to you too about a huge story that has been, especially here in Victoria, around the Victorian Government, and in the budget they have allowed for Netball Victoria, who have been pushing for it, 2 netball statues, because we know in the Victoria there is a lot of statues of male athletes. There's only 2 female athletes that have statues, and it's time to get a netballer out there, at least a couple of netball statues. And I know it's an expensive process, but it's been really interesting to hear the debate during the week of what people think, and the fact that I believe a lot of the statues around the MCG of all the footballers and of all the Olympians are funded. They're either funded by Tats, they're either funded by, Tats Lotto, or they're either funded by Australia Post. And there's been a lot of controversy because it's been an actual thing in the budget that it's taxpayers' money that are funding these statues, which is ridiculous in itself because women's sport, we can't rely on the big sponsors all the time to be able to do this. We need to rely on the government, and we rely on government funding for a whole range of things. And I think it is really important that we have something to commemorate all the incredible netballers that we've had well before our time that I think have done so much for the sport and deserve to have something like that. Let's just take a listen to Neil Mitchell on the radio. He's not my favourite person at the moment, but he has certainly found a way just to almost, I don't know, just be very condescending about this statue.
$300,000 in your money, hidden away in the state budget, $300,000 for a new statue down at John Cain Arena. Now that's in part designed to correct the gender imbalance in statues around town. I guess we've got too many blokes on horses. The money will be spent designing and erecting a statue of what the budget describes as, quote, an iconic female netball identity, unquote. An iconic female netball identity. I don't think they know who it is yet. Well, it's not Liz Ellis. She's not Victorian, so I assume it couldn't be her. And they might be difficulty naming another one. The other point of those magnificent statues at the MCG, they're sponsored both by Australia Post and Tattersalls over the years. This one of the netballer, it's all your money. Although at the moment it's a statue looking for somebody to commemorate.
Oh, man. Can you just even cope? And the interview went on, and he even interviewed Fiona Patten, who was one of the people in Parliament that helped get it through, the funding. And it just, the way he deliberately spoke down to her, the way that he was trying to, like, I guess, question her and make her sound like she didn't know the answers. So he'd be like, are you Googling names of netballers because you don't know any? And
I think he made it pretty clear that the only netballer he knows is Liz Ellis. The fact that he couldn't even mention a Melbourne netballer's name. Like, I'm not from Melbourne, and, like, do your homework, mate. Like, there are so many amazing netball, like, not just players, but coaches we've had in the past who I would assume. And just, like, be smart. For me, I just think he's trying to be relevant here and just trying to get his name out there because in the end, why would we know who the statue is yet? Because you would want to make it a big reveal. Like, the other week we had Billy Slater and Cameron Smith getting announced. That statue was already there and we had a blanket over it so no one knew who it was. Yeah. So it got released on the day it was shown, you know. So just be smart. And he talks about the $300,000 that it's going from tax money from the government, blah, blah, blah. How many females play sport, not just in Melbourne, but in the country?
Yeah. This
is a drop in the ocean for how much revenue female sports brings the government. So I just think, calm down, mate. Get to know your netballers for start. Because Bianca, like, to be honest, I'm so sick of hearing, oh, they play like a netballer, blah, blah, blah. Like, guys, come on, come to a game. Enough's enough.
Yeah.
We're in 2021.
Yes.
Be smart.
Absolutely. And when we talk about who there's going to be the statue, you see lots of conversation on Twitter about who should it be of. I know who I think. I think if, say, there was two statues, for me, Joyce Brown would have to be one of the standouts who I believe would, you know, really deserves it. She's not only played for Australia, she's coached Australia. She's obviously coached a lot of Victorian and Melbourne teams, and she has been incredibly successful at that. She's also done a huge amount behind the scenes for the sport as well. Who else would you throw up in the mix?
For me, it would be Norma Plummer. I think Joyce Brown's a great one. She presented me my Diamonds dress, so she means a lot to me. Plum, I grew up watching the Diamonds when she was the head coach, and I was lucky enough to be coached by her as well. But talking athletes, I think you can't go past Sherelle McMahon. Like, I think she brought netball into the lights and just made such a big deal about it. She's won single-handedly, in my opinion, Com Games, World Cup games. I think she's a brilliant player and people know her. Not just, I guess, our generation, but even young kids know her name. So she's, I guess, someone big that I would probably put up there as well.
Couldn't agree more. So there's three names we're going to throw at you. That's Norma Plummer, Joyce Brown, and Sherelle McMahon. Why not just do three of them? Just tick them, all three of them off. They all deserve to be out there in Victoria as somewhere we can always remember the huge amount of work that they put into the sport.
I agree, V. Let's just do all three. Let's just shut shop. We've got three statues. I would love to see that, especially at John Cain Arena. what I'm excited about this week, it's just the start of the Indigenous round. So we've got 2 weeks. This is the first round. I'm excited to see everyone's dresses.
Oh, absolutely. That's the best part about it, is seeing how the designs. Now, we know some of the teams have already included their Indigenous designs in their dresses that they wear all the time. I think we should see more of that. I think every club should have a piece of their Indigenous design as part of their normal dresses. One game that I'm really looking forward to is actually on Monday night, and that's the Fever are taking on the Giants. It's a sort of a top of the table clash because we know Fever don't, sit actually on top of the table, but they're certainly playing that way. We talk about their penalties. They were minus 12 points on the ladder before they got into the season. They've been able to accumulate a lot of percentage, and so that means at the moment they're, I think, sitting 6th or even higher on the ladder, and if they win this game against the Giants, that they will be sitting in the top 4. And it's really hard. I know you probably can't comment on this, but I think it's really hard to even see them moving out of the top 4 once they get in there, because they have been in such dominant form. But the dominant form is odd too, and we're going to talk a bit about that later, because they don't dominate those first quarters. They take their time to get into a game.
Yeah, but you're right. They're a powerhouse team. I can't see them coming out of the 4 anytime soon, and I think everyone knows that. Like, if they weren't, if they didn't have the salary cap issue and they didn't have that minus 12 points, they'd be sitting at the top of the ladder easily. They're a strong side. They're very hard to get ball off when you've got Janelle Fowler shooting the way she does, and their mid-quarter so quick. So it's going to be interesting, and I find it funny that the talk is just getting louder and louder the more games they win.
And I'm going to throw this to you without notice, Braz. If it wasn't Fever, if it was another team that had this salary cap issue and suspension or whatever it's, misdemeanor, if it wasn't Fever, who's a team who can win quite easily and who, have got a gun team, would we be making as much fuss about it?
No, because they wouldn't be able to get to the 12. I think the big issue is that I'm hearing a lot about is that they've still got the team, except for minus 1 or 2, that breached the salary cap. So if they didn't breach it at the start, they wouldn't have had the team that they've got now. And I think that's the issue. In the end, they're a good team. They're not breaching the salary cap now, so they're doing something right about it.
That's right. They are a great team. Another great team who they are playing is the Giants, and there's been one absolute standout player for the Giants. She's only young, but she has been really dominant, and that is Sophie Dwyer. Now, the first kind of word that I got that Dwyer was in great form and that she's been performing really well was when you played a practice match against them in pre-season, and you came back and you were saying, B, you've got to look out for this player because she is awesome.
Yeah, and when we played the Giants in pre-season, Kira hadn't done her knee then, and Kira was on form. She'd just come back from the Diamond. She was playing great netball, but it didn't matter who was on court. If it was Joe with Kira, if it was Joe with Dwyer, it did not matter. Like, they were unstoppable. But what I loved about Dwyer is no one knew who she was. She was able to shoot 2-pointers, but what she actually did on the centre pass to me was what won me over. She was so hungry for the ball. She was unassuming, but she had the ball in hand like nearly every second pass. So for me, I think she's a player to watch out for. And I know we're talking that, next year, she'll be behind Kira, but you just don't know, because I don't know, Giants just always seem to have lots of good goal attacks.
They sure do. So she's 22 goals at the moment, 76% accuracy, does love a super shot. And we saw that in their game against Vixens, just how confident she was to take it. We know Giants have that more of a strategy around when they do take it. But the shooting stocks for Australian netball are a little low at the moment. Do you see her as being a potential Australian diamond one day, even to, even push for a Commonwealth Games selection?
Yeah, well, that's the talk of the town. Hey, everyone's saying that this girl will now make Com Games, and she's playing like
No pressure.
No, but she's playing really well, and love seeing that. But just takes me back to last week, and we talked about that as soon as you have a player that steps up and plays well, as a goaler, you're pretty much in, because we don't have enough goalers. So for me, it just... I just think gone are the days where you had to play so many years of netball to just wait for someone to retire to step in. It's at the moment, I know we bang on about it every single week, but it's just showing you we've got a player who's just stepped up, first year in, and potentially will be in the Diamonds team. And it wouldn't surprise me. I think she's good enough to be there.
You heard it here first. That was the agenda. Thanks to TAC. How safe is your car? It's now time to get to the nitty gritty, all thanks to Lexus of Berwick, your hybrid destination of choice. Visit lexusofberwick.com.au. This is where we go back to chat a little bit more about fever, because one thing I've seen on our Netty Twitter recently, and thanks for tagging us into this, Jenny, but Craig Moyle put up here, fever the last 3 games. Their first quarters, I don't know, they go missing. They haven't won a first quarter, it's been their last 3 games. And then if we look at their second to fourth quarters, they've won 9, they've lost 0. They are just unbelievable at being able to turn things around in that second quarter. And from watching them against the Thunderbirds, it's not like Janelle Fowler, we know, doesn't probably take as many shots. And if we've got this here of her shots that she's taken in the first quarter. So, you know, she only is averaging putting up 11, which is, I mean, that's a lot for any goaler, but that's not much for her.
If you can keep Janelle Fowler to 11 in any quarter, you've done your job.
Yeah, you've done your job. And she's not even putting up that many attempts in the first quarter. We also know the difference is Alice Teague-Neeld starts often at goal attack, and then Sasha Glasgow comes on at goal attack, usually somewhere around that second quarter into the third quarter. So that is one difference that the team makes. But when you look through all the stats, there isn't a huge amount that really explains why their first quarters are so bad. We know in their game against Lightning, they were down by 9 at quarter time. In their game against Thunderbirds, I think it was similar. They were down by 9 or something at quarter time. But they find a way. And to me, when I look at it, it's the undisciplined play in that first quarter. It just takes them a while to, you know, get off the body. And, you know, there's just a few penalties, extra penalties that they have. There's a few extra turnovers. Nothing significant, but it just shows what an incredible team they are, that they can just pull it all together, find a way, get back to the way they usually play, their usual processes. And you hear Stacey Marinkovic say that a lot. She's always like, discipline, it's about being disciplined. And you can even see it in Courtney Bruce down the other end. It's like she switches it on, she comes off the body, she moves her feet, she gets ball cleanly. It's a stand-up.
But maybe that's their tactic. Like you said, the first quarter, they're getting more penalties. They're doing all these, like, they're hitting the body harder. But maybe that's their tactic. First quarter, wear the other team down. I know, like, if you're going to get hit from a goalkeeper running into the pocket, all it takes is getting hit once to know you're on guard next time you're running in there.
Yes.
So maybe that's their thing. Just the first quarter, make sure you let that team know that you're here. And then the last 3 quarters, they just play their brand of netball.
So when you flip it around then, you say for the Giants, if they have a great first quarter, it's got to be a great first quarter. They've got to have...
And you can't just be up by a few points. You can be up by a fair bit.
You've got to, like, I mean, some teams try 9 and that still doesn't work for them, but you think for Giants, they've really got to focus on stepping it up in that first quarter, and which they generally play quite well in the first quarter, but making sure also while they've got 2 pretty sharp super shot shooters that they're taking some of those shots and trying to get as much lead as they can in that first bit of the game.
Do you reckon the Giants overplay the 2 points in the first quarter just to get up a bit more?
I think so. Why wouldn't you? It's just, the only thing I say that because I'm clearly not playing out there.
Or a goal attack.
Or a goaler. No pressure to them. But I think they've got to try something, or do they back their game in because they're a good side to just play the way they'd usually play and want it to be, you know, hope that it's good enough, believe in themselves that it will be good enough to get them across the line in the end.
Yeah, well, I reckon they'd do it because you've got a Harton and Dwyer both in the top 5 of the Super Shots. So when you've got 2 of your players on court in the top 5, why wouldn't you? And it's their game anyway. It's not like other teams where it's a bit awkward to shoot that. Like, that's their game. They do it from the start of the first whistle to the end. It doesn't even matter if it's in the 5 minutes or not.
Absolutely. That was the nitty gritty, all thanks to Lexus of Berwick. All right, it's now time for our social scoop. And last week, we were talking about rules that drive us insane. I was saying, intimidation, that's our job as defenders. You were saying, what were you saying? Oh, no, because the throw-in.
Everything that I get pulled for, I don't like.
Matilda Garrett had one for Thunderbirds, and I could see just out of the corner right, the last second she caught out that the Fever player was off the court, and she just held herself back, and I was like, smart move. Maybe you taught.
She watched our show.
Her. Yeah,
thanks, Tilly.
Exactly. But we also had Linda Easter tweet us and say, what about this one? And she even tagged you in it. The worst netball rule is surely not wholly within the circle. How often do you get pulled up for this, Braz?
I haven't been pulled up with it yet, touch wood. Now I reckon I've jinxed myself. But I think we're right here. Linda's hit it on nail on the head. I hate this rule. I actually don't even understand it too much. But I can tell you when I'm centre, I make sure I run to it, and then I stop and I like slowly put my foot in just so it's.
So do you have to have both feet in? And didn't it change the rules?
No, now
Like,
it's
you just
one.
have to one.
Yeah. But like centres, we still make mistakes. We're only human. Well, that circle's not that big.
Just don't do it this week, thanks. But yeah, no, that's right. It's a hard one because it's all about the umpires, isn't it?
And I think it's just being calm as well. Like I know players normally do it right at the end when you're a couple points down and it's that rush to get back into there. But I guess it's one rule that you just need to do as centre. Put your foot in the circle, but I hate it. We don't need rules. I'm all about this. Should just stay as segment. What rule should we get rid of?
Yeah, absolutely. So keep tweeting us with any rules that you think, you know what, it's time for them to go. We probably can't get rid of all of them because otherwise that would be a nightmare. But it's time for some of them to go. While we're on Social Scoop, I also want to highly recommend a podcast that I had listened to a couple of weeks ago. Sam Squires does this particular podcast. We'll put it up on screen now. I think it was just an excellent interview with Gemma Mai, and we know it's Indigenous round, but she spoke just so genuinely about what she went through last year, and I just think it's really important for all of us to learn. Gemma hasn't spoken much publicly about it, but I just thought, it was really great interview by Sam. So thank you for tagging me in it, because she tagged me in it so that I would listen to it. And so make sure you find this wherever you listen to your podcast. Go and have a listen to this one, especially in the lead up to Indigenous round.
And so great that Gemma feels confident and comfortable to actually talk up and be so honest about what happened and how she felt.
Well, I was so impressed. And
I haven't listened to it yet, but I will go find it.
You can do that on the plane.
I love Gemma Mai. I can't wait. It'll be great.
Yeah. All right, it's now time to get to Brazilliant and Braz. That's where I just let you take it.
Thank you, Bianca. All right, this time I've always tried to stay away from my Magpies because I don't want this show to be all about the Magpies, but I couldn't help it this week. This goes out to my coach, Nicole Richardson, and to all coaches really that show emotion when a team wins. So here we go here. I've just had an interview about post-game, about how to find the game and all of that. And as the interview finished, I felt someone pretty much tackle me. So let's just take a look here.
Congrats on the win.
Like, who is this? Like, that's why I kept saying, who is this? Who is this? Because Richo wants us to be professional, and I'm looking at this going like, is this professional, Richo?
Did Rob Wright ever do that?
Yeah, Rob showed emotion. I loved it. And that's the thing, right? I love coaches that show emotion because for me, one, I'm someone that shows emotion because when I'm out there, it's what I love it. Yeah. And that's what the coaches are there for. You know, they want the win just as much as we do, probably sometimes a little bit more because we're playing their game plan.
Yep.
But, you know, what we don't see enough about is coaches standing up. They've got a box now, like the basketballers do, to get up. They can walk up and down the sideline. Nick does it. Then that's what I love about it, Richo. She actually got told to get back in the box because she was out of it.
Out of it.
She's probably yelling at me, telling me to do something. But I love it. I know she does it. Bryony Ankle does it. Stace Marinkovic. Coaches, we love it. Keep doing it.
Simone doesn't do it, does she? McInnes, the Vixens coach?
If Simone ever stood up there, I'd have a heart attack because I'd just be scared by myself.
But as a former player who played under Simone, she's got this look about her on the sidelines. So even when you're playing and if you make a mistake and you wouldn't even dare look across because you're just going, uh-oh, I will be in all sorts of trouble. Especially with rolling subs now, she'd be like, get off. But I loved her passion, and she most often shows it at training more so than she does in front of the cameras on game day. But yes, it's very good to see, isn't it?
But anyway, enough about the other coaches. Nick Richardson, this one goes out to you because you're just unreal. Love the passion. You're just a little bit more professional in our jokes. But well done on your Brazilliant.
That was Brazilliant for another week. Now we must have to do a shout out to Marcella Massey she was up at the Sunshine Coast Lightning game. She took this photo and we never gave her credit for it last week. So we apologise for that, but we also love your work. She sent me a photo on Insta as well of me interviewing my former Australian coach in Jill McIntosh. So yes, we really do love your work, and thank you very much for doing all that you do. And there's a lot of volunteer photographers out there and people that are writing stories about netball for Netball Scoop, and we just want to give them a shout out to say, without all of that conversation on Twitter and without all of those photos, I think it just adds so much to the game. So we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and everyone that volunteers as well, because so many of these jobs are volunteer, and the fact that, you know, we talked about before how much, like, netball get grief about, oh, we're a soft sport, blah, blah, blah. Like, everyone works so hard to get the game where it is, and it's people like you that help us, I guess, to make the game better and eyes on the game. I love it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for watching Centre Court. All thanks to TAC. Make safety features a priority in your next car. Visit howsafeisyourcar.com.au. Braz, all the best this week. Please come home and please make sure you're sitting back at the desk next week.
And make sure you add us on Twitter.
Add us on Twitter.
About it.
At Centre Court Show is our handle. We'll both tweet it out when this episode is live. And hashtag Centre Court Netball whenever you want to join in the conversation and throw some bits of information our way. We'll see you again next week.